These folks would take a significant risk in return for a small chance of earning a big reward. The next most common suggestion is to set up a car wash or lemonade stand, using the $5 to purchase starting materials. This is a fine option for anyone interested in earning a few extra dollars of spending money in 2 hours. But most of the students eventually found a way to move far beyond the standard responses. They took seriously the challenge to question traditional assumptions, exposing a wealth of possibilities in order to create as much value as possible. How did they do this? Here's a clue. The teams that made the most money didn't use the $5 at all. They realized that focusing on the money actually framed the problem way too tightly. They understood that $5 is nearly nothing and decided to reinterpret the problem more broadly. What can you do to make money if you start with nothing? They ramped up their observation skills, tapped into their talents, and unlocked their creativity to identify problems in their midst. Problems they experienced or noticed others experiencing. Problems they might have seen before, but had never thought to solve. These problems were nagging, but not necessarily at the forefront of anyone's mind. By unearthing these problems and then working to solve them, the winning team brought in more than $600, and the average return on the $5 investment was 4,000%. If you take into account that many of the teams didn't use the funds at all, then their financial returns were infinite. So what did they do? One group identified a problem common in a lot of college towns: the frustratingly long lines at popular restaurants on Saturday nights. The team decided to help those people who didn't want to wait in line. They paired off and booked reservations at several restaurants. As the times for their reservations approached, they sold each reservation for up to $20 to customers who were happy to avoid a long wait. As the evening wore on, the students made several interesting observations. First, they realized that the female students were better at selling the reservations than the male students, probably because customers were more comfortable being approached by the young women. They adjusted their plans so that the male students ran around town making reservations at different restaurants, while the female students sold those places in line. They also learned that the entire operation worked best at restaurants that use vibrating pagers to alert customers when their table is ready. Physically swapping pagers with those who received one later made customers feel as though they were receiving something tangible for their money. They were more comfortable handing over their money and pager in exchange for the new pager. This had an additional bonus. Teams could then sell the newly acquired pager as the later reservation time grew nearer. Another team took an even simpler approach. They set up a stand in front of the student union, where they offered to measure bicycle tire pressure for free. If the tires needed filling, they added air for $1. At first, they thought they were taking advantage of their fellow students, who could easily go to a nearby gas station to have their tires filled. But after their first few customers, the students realized the bicyclists were incredibly grateful. Even though the cyclists could get their tires filled for free nearby, and the task was easy for the students to perform, the students were providing a convenient and valuable service. In fact, halfway through the 2-hour period, the team stopped asking for a specific payment and requested donations instead. Their income soared. They made much more when their customers were reciprocating for a free service than when asked to pay a fixed price. For this team, as well as for the team making restaurant reservations, experimenting along the way paid off. The iterative process, in which small changes are made in response to customer feedback, allowed them to optimize their strategy on the fly. Each of these projects brought in a few $100s, and their fellow classmates were duly impressed. However, the team that generated the greatest profit looked at the resources at their disposal through a completely different lens and made $650. These students determined that the most valuable asset they had was neither the $5 nor the 2 hours. Instead, their insight was that their most precious resource was their 3-minute presentation time in class. They decided to sell it to a company that wanted to recruit students in the class. The team created a 3-minute commercial for that company and showed it to the students during their presentation time. This was brilliant. They recognized they had a fabulously valuable asset.